Welcome to this episode of Feng Shui for Career. I'm Janet Yong, and in my channel, I share about Feng Shui, Bazi, entrepreneurship as well as personal growth in the areas of motivation, communication as well as leadership. In today's episode on Feng Shui for Career, I'll cover a little bit more on personal Feng Shui, as in how do we utilize our working spaces at work as well as at home, especially if you are working from home nowadays quite a bit. So if you do like the videos that I'm sharing on this particular channel, please do remember to click on the subscribe button, like the video if you feel that it has been useful for yourself, share it with your friends, and click on the notifications bell so that you can receive a reminder whenever I upload new videos as well. In this episode of Feng Shui for Career, which I'll discuss in the next segment, we'll talk about how do you utilize your personal space, whether it's in the office or at home, as well as when you are working in a space, what are some of the physical structures you need to be watching out for so that it doesn't create problems for us when we are working. So without further ado, let's move on to the next segment. Now, let's revisit when we are looking at Feng Shui, what kind of luck are we looking at? Basically, there are three kinds of luck when we investigate from a Chinese metaphysics perspective, like I mentioned earlier on in my first video in the Feng Shui series when I was talking about choosing a suitable home. So one of the first things that we look at is actually heaven luck, which I shared in the Bazi series or the Asian Personality Profiling System series itself, as to what you're born with in terms of your characteristics, what are the influences that will come into your life, and therefore what can you do to basically maximize your potential. Then when we talk about Feng Shui, it's really about the earth luck, meaning the environment that we live in as well as work in. So it is crucial that we also observe what are the energies around us, whether is it for us or against us, because it affects us as human beings when we breathe and do lots of activities in the space that we are in. So of course the last one is basically mankind luck. That's really your background, your attitude, your motivation and your action. There is really no point of being self-aware, understanding the Feng Shui energies when you do not take any kind of action to improve or maximize your potential as well, right? So since you're on this video, I'm sure you're someone who's motivated to understand not only yourself but take the right kind of steps and actions to better your career, your life, harmony and happiness generally, so that it will promote better health as well. Let's take a look at what is it that we talk about when we're looking at personal Feng Shui from a career perspective. Basically, what it entails is the physical environment that we are in. So I'll share with you some of the key things that we should be looking out for when we are seated in our desk or at home in a particular room itself. The next part of personal Feng Shui is really looking at the Qua number, which is similar to what I covered in the 8 mansions formula for looking for a house. And then we look at the 8 aspirations either in the office room or within your desk itself. If you are looking at it from an entire house or entire office perspective, we'll also look at flying stars. But for simplicity's sake, today I'll just cover what I mentioned earlier on, the 3 things in terms of physical environment, the Qua number application in terms of your facing direction, and 8 aspirations as well. So when we look at a physical environment, what are the key things that we need to look out for? You would have always heard that we should be looking for a solid wall when seated, so that it's a stable energy with support for us. And we should not be facing a huge wall in front of us or a tall building in front of us, because at times when you always look up and stare at a blank wall, it can basically promote some kind of blockage over a period of time. So if you are facing a wall, a panel, maybe you can either stick a garden picture or something pleasing to your eyes, so long as it's not tall and sharp, that represents obstacles. Then of course what we are looking at is simulating a bright hall, either with the pictures or when you're seated looking far away, so that it's representing a open and bright hall where your thoughts can flow well. Then we will check out for physical poison arrows. What does it mean by physical poison arrows? Basically, some examples of physical poison arrows are the beams that may be directly above our head, the columns, especially the rectangular ones that has its corner coming directly at you, or basically a big column, whether round or square, directly in front of you. Like I mentioned earlier in another episode in Feng Shui, with these particular columns and physical structure, it creates too fast of an energy that can create problems for us, and which we will then call them sha qi or poison arrow. The next thing is the open cabinets as well as the corners of furniture that may be coming directly at you, either directly behind you, at your side, that can over a period of time cause aches for you all over in your body. And if possible, try not to sit directly next to a staircase, whether is it going up or going down, generally because the flow of energy is too fast as well. Then when we look at escalators in office buildings, if your office main door or your office seat is too near an escalator, is similar to that of the staircases, which can cause too much of fast energies. Similar concept with if you're seated right at the end of a long corridor as well. Now, other potential hazards in the office include that of many electrical equipment. Why that's the case is because all these electrical equipment emits electromagnetic radiation, or basically energies that are not good for your health. And if you're seated at that particular location for a long period of time, it can be an issue. If a generator or satellite is just outside your home's window or your office window, that could also pose a major problem. Therefore, do not sit too near or stay too near power plants or generators. So photocopying equipment also has the same problem of the chemical emissions. Well, I'm someone who needs at least some kind of tidiness at my desk in order for me to work. So nobody can think very clearly. So remember to declutter your desk. And if you're working at home, look for a space, declutter it before you start working there as well. The next part in talking about personal feng shui is really talking about personal qua application for the facing direction when you're seated down. As I've shared in another video, from the perspective of 8 mansions when looking for a house, you are also looking at the east group and west group, so the directions doesn't change. What you try to do is face one of your good direction. So what does it mean when I say try and face one of your good direction? Facing a good direction for a prolonged period of time, especially when we're looking at more than 3 hours a day when working at your desk, is really about your facing direction when you're facing your laptop or facing the screen of your computer. Tilt it such that it is facing one of your good directions based on the qua number. So if you do not know your qua number, please visit bazicalculator.janetyong.com and get your favorable directions there. So the other thing that we would like to look at is when we are seated, besides facing one of your good directions, you also need to take into account that when you're facing your good direction, it should not be facing any of those physical structures. If it does, you need to either cover your view of the physical structure so that it's broken and slowed down, or you have to tilt to an alternative good direction. The other thing you need to be aware of is each year there is a Grand Duke direction. And when you spend time sitting facing that Tai Shui or Grand Duke direction throughout the year, you will usually face a huge force that can throw you off balance, therefore creating mistakes. So for this year, the year of the rat, we are looking at not facing North 2, and for next year 2021 we are not facing Northeast 1. So just be aware of what are these particular directions. So therefore, even if north is one of your best direction this year, just make sure you're not facing within the north 2 degrees. As well as if it's 2021, even if northeast is one of your best direction, just make sure you're not facing between the degrees of northeast 1. You should try not to sit facing a wall, which represents a physical structure. If not, then create a pleasing scenery in front of you by either having a picture of a garden or something that you like to see. Please do not sit with the door directly behind you, especially if you are in an office where it is the main entrance door. Why this is the case? Because you'll create a sense of insecurity because you do not know who's coming from behind the door, especially when it's a main door. What I found when I've done Feng Shui in the last decade is people who are seated with their backs towards a door, or officers whom the bosses ask why there's this staff turnover every single time, is usually occurring at a seat where the staff is actually seated with the back towards a door. Now what about at home? Now at home, generally if it's a bedroom door, unless your bedroom door faces the main door or the bedroom door faces the toilet, it's not too big of an issue. Now then the next thing you should be aware of is please do not sit under a beam or a lower ceiling for a prolonged period of time, because as human beings we have energies, so our energies emit upwards. If you have any lower ceiling, it's actually going to depress on you over an extended period of time. If you're going to sit there only for 1 or 2 hours, it's not a huge issue. But if you're seated under there for 3 or more hours, or especially if you're lying down on the bed, if you have a ceiling fan or a lower ceiling directly above of you, over a period of time, it creates stress and some health issues as well. So the next thing we need to look at is you should not sit facing column like I mentioned earlier, or a corner, so that it will not cause issues from you, either from a backache perspective or when you have a corner directly pointed at your back. Sometimes you get into backstabbing issues with other of your colleagues. The next thing that we're looking at when we're looking at Feng Shui for our desk, our cubicle, or a room that we use as a study room, it's generally 8 aspirations. Now I've covered this in some other videos on Feng Shui. What are the 8 aspirations? Generally for work, we will usually look at north because it represents career stability, south because it represents career recognition, or if you are in marketing, sales, your own business, then the south sector is important because of your brand recognition. Then we're looking at southeast generally for wealth, and the west, it is more for the profit and loss if you are a business owner, and that's how we can utilize small sectors. So when we are looking at a house, we use the bigger Tai Chi, where we look at the big sectors of where the house is or which part of the office it occupies. If it is your desk, we can do it similarly. So let's look at how do we activate a certain sector of your office desk, office cubicle, or room. Usually when we're looking at activation, we try to utilize the productive cycle. What is the productive cycle? Productive cycle is water producing wood, wood producing fire, fire producing earth, earth producing metal, and metal producing water. So if you want to understand a bit more about the 5-element cycle, if it's the first time you're joining me on this video, you can click on the button that I mentioned on top here, where there are videos that I talk about the 5-element cycle. So when we look at the 8 aspirations in the north, what do we do? Usually, because north represents career stability, I'll cover in the next slide as to what you can do to activate for career stability. The south represents recognition and promotion, like I mentioned earlier. Southeast represents wealth, so if you're in sales, commission base, it is usually a good area to activate. The southwest is generally for relationship. Northwest represents helpful people, networking luck. And the northeast, if you are involved in an industry where you do a lot of education, writing, publishing, then northeast is crucial. and then we have the west sector for profit accumulation. Let's first cover 2 examples on how would you activate a sector for career in terms of 8 aspirations. Number 1, the north's element is water. So to produce water, we have metal producing water. Therefore, in the north sector of your desk, you should have more metallic items like objects that are metal, circle in shape. The color is actually that of white, silver or gold. Or you can use water in terms of color is blue, black, gray. The shape is wavy patterns. I know some may not really believe in symbols. However, I came actually from the medical industry on the supply side. So when I first encountered Feng Shui and placement of items, I had the same questions and the key thing about does it really work? So I actually started from a retail perspective, talking to customers, and the feedback has been great. So that's why I didn't go back to corporate. I've been in Feng Shui for more than a decade. One of the key things is when your back is facing a long corridor and there's no support and you really need stability. So some people will actually use a metallic tortoise, place it either behind them or in the north sector of their desk, their cubicle or the room. So that's one of the things that you can utilize for career stability. And if you're using the dragon tortoise, just make sure that the dragon looks far away, does not actually look into a wall. And the dragon tortoise compared to the tortoise, dragon tortoise is a little bit more powerful, so therefore you should be placing it a bit higher up. Most of the times I'll recommend that my clients, if they're putting a dragon tortoise, put it only actually in the office, not in your bedroom, because it's a little bit more aggressive. And if you put the dragon tortoise, try to put it higher and let it look further, either towards a window or towards a door. So then when we're looking at south, recognition as well as fame, luck. Now the south element is that of fire. So what produces fire? Wood produces fire. So to activate the south, you can generally have more wood in that location, either a green leafy plant, okay, so long as it's not a cactus or bonsai. And the plant should be in soil, mainly because the south is the fire element and you don't want to have water in there. So the colors are green and dark brown, and the shape of wood is rectangle. Then the next thing that you can look at for activation is fire, basically in terms of lights, in terms of the colors of red, pink, orange, and the triangle shape. If you are into symbols, you can use birds. Birds represents especially those in flight, is searching for opportunities. Else, you can also put your name card in the south sector. You can also basically put your certificates, your awards, and if you are in sales or marketing, the brand they are trying to promote, you can put in the south sector. This is from the perspective of 8 aspirations. Let's take a look at how do you measure these sectors on your desk. So when we are seated at our desk, as shown in this particular example here, is we will take a compass and put it in our hands, usually at the chest level, to measure. Do not place your compass on the desk because there are too much equipment and too much electrical energy that will cause some misreading. And basically this is around the area where we are breathing. So that's one of the reasons why we'll put the compass in our palms facing front. So when you face front and you look at the compass, that's your facing direction. Now then I will look at the compass itself and see where are the various different sectors. So if the sector north in terms of the compass is pointing this way, then the sector towards the left hand side of your desk is the north sector. So in this picture here, you can see that we can not only just mark our house into 9 grids like as shown in the 8 mansions diagram in the Feng Shui series, you can also mark your desk into 9 grids. What happens if your desk is L-shaped? Then you can either take the maximum length and width of that desk area, or you can split it into 2 small Tai Chi for you to mark the 9 grids as well. So that's how you determine which are the sectors on your desk, and therefore how you will place the items or activate the items like I mentioned earlier. So in the north sector, for instance, then that's where you would put anything for career stability. South is your name cards, your certificates, your awards. Okay, so in the next slide, what I'd like to show you right now is in a office sitting environment. How do you see whether the energy is really blocked? In this picture here, you can see that from the door, it's basically looking at a corner, which poses a problem. It's a long corridor that it goes to the different people in the cubicle. And then you'll notice that there's this individual that is seated with the window towards the back of the person. So generally we usually would not like that, mainly because it represents not a lot of stability, especially if the window looks out to a river, a big sea. Then definitely it represents no support for this person when the person sits with the back towards a window. In this picture here, it's much better because the entrance into the office, it's a lot wider, so it simulates a little bit like a bright hall. And then at the corner where there are plants that slow down the energy, and you can see that the person has shifted towards a direction where he or she is seated with the back towards a wall. So this is a much better flow in terms of energy within the office itself. Now let's take a look at individual desk positions. So you can either use these desk positions in your own office, or you can use it from a room that you're working from at home. So the first one, it's a best position where if your desk is actually diagonally opposite the door and you have your back towards a wall and you're seated not looking at any columns or sharp pointy objects and facing one of your good directions. This is one of the not great directions because this person, like I mentioned earlier on, is seated with the back towards a window, so representing no support. Then the other one that is not great is when the door is to the side of the person, because then it's also very similar where the energy is coming in from the left, is too near the door. You may get disturbed often, therefore you cannot really focus and concentrate on your work. And the worst kind of position would be if you have a desk that actually is with the person seated with the back directly towards the door. Most times in this scenario, this person, if working in a company and seated at a cubicle in this area, will usually not stay long, especially if this door of the room leads to that of the main office entrance and down a staircase especially. So that's what I'd like to share from a Feng Shui for career perspective. I hope you have really enjoyed this particular video and the things that I've shared. Hope that it will help you to have a better career, better health. And if you do like this particular video or the series that I'm sharing, please remember to subscribe to my channel. Click the notifications bell so that you can get a notification whenever I upload new videos, as well as like the video and share it if you find it useful for yourself. So till the next episode, goodbye.